So let's move on to our skill position players now. Running backs, receivers, tight ends. Starting off with our two running backs, one of them being Audric Estime from Notre Dame, the other one being Jonathan Brooks from Texas. Pretty impressive what they're doing now without Bijan Robinson and Rashawn Johnson. The three receivers we have are all SEC receivers, one of them being Luther Burden III from Missouri, Malik Nabers from LSU, and his teammate Brian Thomas Jr. from LSU. It has been incredible what those two and Jaden Daniels have been doing for the Tigers in that passing game this season. And of course, the tight end is maybe the easiest one out of all of these to pick, Brock Bowers from Georgia. So an all SEC receiving core, Dalton, and who's the guy in that all SEC receiving core that you want to highlight?
Well, it's insane that you got three of these guys in the same game last week, and I'm actually going to highlight the one from the team that went down in that game, Luther Burden. Look, he's been our guy for a few weeks now, and this Missouri offense has turned around. The first reason that they have turned this thing around and Kirby Moore has gone in there and made this a borderline elite offense is that he went in there and understood that Luther Burden's the best athlete on this team. Leads the country in receiving grade and yards after the catch. Intermediate balls, deep balls, screen passes, yards after catch. I believe he's forced 15 missed tackles, which is top 5 in the country, might even be second. He just does it all. And Brady Cook's turnaround making the reads in this offense is great. But Luther Burden has unlocked everything. This is a guy who had, I believe, less than 250 yards last season. They didn't know how to use him. They didn't know how good he was. And Kirby Moore goes in there and turns this guy into arguably the best receiver, at least playing right now, like the best receiver in the country. I know some other guys who aren't putting up huge numbers that we know are going to go high in the draft. But what they're doing at Missouri, despite the loss, look, they still put up 39 points in that game. They only lost that game because Daniels and Nabers and Thomas are so great. I mean, because, we had pointed out that Missouri is likely to expose LSU in the secondary. Nobody more so than Burden, 11 catches for 149 yards. Missouri's for real. I know they lost this game. They're not undefeated anymore. They're a real problem for anybody in front of them. They're only going to get better, and Luther Burden is the number one reason for that.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not going to spoil our next week's video, but I'd be pretty surprised if Luther Burden III is not our Biletnikoff winner in the midseason right now, man. He has been unbelievable. Want to remind people, just a true sophomore, too. He still has another year of college football in him, which is going to be very exciting for Missouri fans and not very exciting for the rest of the SEC having to defend him. The guy I'm going with, the guy who I waxed poetic about last week when I said he's the greatest tight end in college football history, and I still believe that, Brock Bowers, man. What he has been doing this season is absolutely absurd. Here are all the stats where he leads all tight ends in the country. Receiving grade, catches, receiving yards, yards after the catch, receiving yards after contact, receiving first downs and touchdowns, forced missed tackles, and yards per route run. This guy is by far the best player at his position in the country. And I don't think there's another position right now where it's easier to find the number one player at that position. Brock Bowers, one of the best players in college football. He is legitimately, in my opinion, in the Heisman race right now as a tight end, which is absolutely absurd. And a lot of people I've seen on social media, when trying to take away from Brock Bowers, are saying, okay, well, he's just a great receiver. He's not really a good blocker, like what they did with Kyle Pitts. Brock Bowers right now has the 9th best run blocking grade so far this season. So he has been always a great run blocker. I think the comparison for him I've heard a lot is George Kittle. Jordan Reed said it on the show, man, and I see it too, man. He's a great receiver, really good blocker as well. Brock Bowers is by far, in my opinion, the best tight end in college football. And I think once the season is over, once he wins a John Mackey Award again, which he's on pace for, we're going to look back and say this is the greatest tight end in college football history. And I don't think it's hyperbole to say that, man, because he has been that special.